about the healthy aging for all of us. I think we are sort of everyone participate in this aging process. So by working together, we may find collectively a good solutions for all of us. And also, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all the distinguished speakers for their contribution to tonight's event. And I can guarantee you, you will learn so much from their presentation, and your feedback, comment, and can make even better. And also, I also like to thank some of the support CALIT2 has received in the past year from our community. For example, from Urban Health Foundations, and they are our partners to really promote this healthy aging. I think it's so critical to our community, to all of us. And so tonight's topic is really focusing on the technology, how the technology can be part of the solution for promoting this healthy aging for all of us. And all the speakers, they are the expert in the field and can tell us their thoughts. And the last one, I'd like to also thank our long-term sponsor, Nov.10, for their sponsorship of this Igniting Technology event in the last so many years. I even cannot count that, probably it's more than 10 years. And without their continuing support, we won't be here to have such a great environment to really contribute to this thought. I hope to bring everyone together. So after the presentation, I would like to invite you to join us for the reception and the network sessions. So at this time, I'd like to invite tonight's moderator, Ram, to come to the podium to host the events. Thank you, Ram.
Yeah, so how do I get to it from here? Can I do that? Let's see. You're all... This is probably it. See if that's it. No, that's not it.
This one?
Down here. These are too small for me to see. Maybe this is it. Ah, there we go. How do you start it from here? Right here?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm technically challenged. I'm Ron Schoenbaum. I'm actually filling in for my partner, Mike Giuliano, who was listed on the program. I'm a partner at Kenobi Martins. I specialize in helping software and IT companies obtain patent protection for their innovations. Our firm is a proud sponsor of CALIT2. As GP mentioned, we've been a sponsor for over 10 years. And I'm just going to say a few words about our firm and then have invite our speakers to come up. We are purely an intellectual property firm. We've been in business for over 5 decades. We don't do anything but IP. We have offices in several locations in California. Our biggest office is right here in Irvine. We also have offices in Washington, D.C., Seattle, and we're opening one in New York. We have over 300 attorneys and scientists. We have more registered patent attorneys than any other firm in the country. Most of our attorneys have degrees, usually advanced degrees in engineering and science, over 95%. We handle a wide range of intellectual property. This is a long list. I won't go through it all, but just about anything you could think of in a variety of industries. And we have been ranked by U.S. News and World Report and a number of other organizations as one of the top IP firms. If anyone has any questions whatsoever about what can be patented in this space, I'll be happy to answer those questions either during questions and answers or during the reception afterwards. So I'm going to be, after we're done, after the speakers are finished, we're going to do a question and answer session before the reception. And the speakers, feel free to please come up. I don't know if you know which order you're going to be going in, but let's go ahead and get started. Thank you. Are we going to have everybody come sit up here or no? No? Okay, one at a time. All right. That's why you're all looking at me with a confused look.
Okay. You know you're old when you have to put your glasses on to read. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay.
if you hover over this, you'll see all of them. And can you tell which one is yours? Which company? That one was mine.
There we go, that's me.
it, okay. And then you can just go right to here to start the slideshow. Got it. Okay, great.
Nope,
No,
that's
no, that's
yours.
still ours.
So let's,
Let's see, we probably need to close that one. Right there. There you go.
there we go.
Now you can go down to here and start, or you can start from up there, either way.
There we go.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and to not be in jail. I just broke out of jail. I'm the interim chief medical officer right now for the LA Sheriff's Department. I can't tell you how glad I am to not be in LA right now and to be here instead. I'm a little frazzled because it was a quick turnaround for me today. So I appreciate being here. And a big shout out to my Irvine Health Foundation family that I'm a proud trustee of, and we are very happily involved right now on a great venture with CALIT2 around healthy aging. I'm currently a principal with Health Management Associates. That's my big PowerPoint because it's the only template that I had, but I'm excited to really be here. And I had to redo my presentation after the election, so I'm sure everyone else did too. So bear with me. I might be a physician, but I'm really not going to dive into a lot of disease. I really want to focus more on social determinants of health and really lay the context for what the rest of the speakers will be talking about today. And I might be preaching to the choir on a lot of these highlights and statistics, but I think it's important for us to understand the demographic of the population that we would be focusing on. It's an interesting demographic, and it's a large demographic. The individuals, over the age of 65 are numbering in the close to 50 million in 2014 and are increasing by 30%, have increased by 30% over the last 10 years and will continue to increase over the next 10 years. Their life expectancy as well is reaching, over 20 years. That means that we are doing a better job of preventative and secondary medicine and, prevention for them, that they themselves are focusing on wellness and are taking better care of themselves. And we need to continue on that focus. But there are significant issues that are affecting this population that may start affecting that life expectancy. No surprise here, women outnumber men. So there are a lot of women out there, younger men, who might be in need of a partner. What's interesting is that a good significant number of these individuals are not in institutions. So I think that a lot of us think that in America, a lot of older individuals are, institutionalized, but actually more and more of these individuals are staying healthy and in their homes, and we want to continue that trend. The economic state, however, of our seniors, and I think this is very important for us to focus on, particularly given our election and particularly given the focus of how our demographic is changing. And in Orange County, this is really important, is actually a little grim. The median income for people is on the decline. And that's not a surprise given what happened to our economy. And not a surprise given that seniors have fixed income, unlike the rest of us who were still working when the recession hit. Of course, they had, they were not putting more money into their pocket, were not able to work. And really, for individuals who were heading up their household and they were over the age of 65, the reported income in 2014 was around $55,000. Now, it seems like a lot of money, but it really isn't a lot of money. And when you think of when you're living in a place like Orange County, that's not a lot of money. And when you start thinking of what co-pays are, and when you start thinking about food and just basic life, that starts really eating away at stuff. when you look at the major sources of seniors' income, then you really start seeing how dire a situation can be and how important it is for us to advocate for certain safety nets for seniors. The majority of older persons say that the brunt of their income comes from Social Security benefits, hence how important that is for them, and why when they vote, this is something that's really important. Income from assets is still reported at about 51%, but unfortunately, seniors end up eating away at their assets the longer that they live. So they're living longer, but the longer that they live, they start to eat up their assets. I have a lot of friends, when they start hitting their 80s or 90s, a lot of my patients start saying, I never thought I'd live old enough to start kind of outliving my money. I thought I was doing really well. And so we really need to focus on that. A couple of interesting California statistics for you to look at. Despite all this, we live in a really great state. People are healthy here, and people feel healthy. So you can see here, and I'm going to go through this because I only have 5 minutes, and I really want to get to the great important stuff. So people in California feel that they're healthy. They have a good outlook. They eat well. They sleep well. They don't get injured a lot until they start getting a little bit older. So they tend to be in good health. They tend to be healthier earlier on, then they take a dip when they're around retirement age, and then they start eating a bit better. These are opportunities for you developing apps and maybe ways to alert people. Depression doesn't tend to hit very hard until they're, when they're in their mid 50s to 60s, but then it takes a peak up again after age 65. We're not seeing that here. I wanted to put this here because of the election. Louisiana is to your left, California is to your right. Louisiana is one of our poorest states. And as you can see in Louisiana, people are much sicker, disabled, and not doing as well much earlier on in their life than compared to California. Same thing here with injuries. Come to Orange County. Very quickly, you can read that slide. Orange County mirrors the country. Despite our vast wealth here, our seniors, do not have a lot of money. They're not rolling in a lot of money here. They have homes and they're stable, but the problem is that they start eating through their savings. And this increasing population really puts a big burden on our health expenditures. And that's the crux of what I want to talk about today. And so what we really need to focus on is when you look at this slide, this is the growth of our senior population projected to 2050. And so this is from HMA, my consulting firm, 2014, pre-Tuesday. And this is what I want to focus on because this is going to be radically different. We don't know what it's going to be. So when you look on the exchange and on Medicaid, Medicare is static, red line. That's not going to be touched. We have no idea what's going to happen to the exchange. Now, before you hit 65, if you don't have employer-based insurance and you have to get your insurance through the exchange, you might be affected if that changes. And if you are a poor senior, you might be affected because Medicaid might move to block grants. So those two are pretty big numbers when you add it up. So that's what right now is up in the air. This slide, we have no idea what it's going to look like. Our firm spent 6 hours today with analysts trying to figure out and guesstimate what this might look like. No idea. So in other words, this is just a big question mark. And yet, when you look at what really affects health outcomes, healthcare is just a tiny piece of the pie. And that's where you come in, right? So people like me focus a lot on that 10% of the pie, but in reality, even healthcare, and that's what the Affordable Care Act actually did focus on a lot. How many of you have heard of the triple aim? Right? Value-based payment. So part of what happened in the move with the Affordable Care Act is this move from fee-for-service or just getting paid for volume to moving away from that and getting paid for value. And in that value payment is actually getting paid for keeping people healthy, keeping people out of the hospital, keeping people well, coordinating their care, keeping costs down. And in order to do that, you have to manage behaviors, you need to manage their social circumstances. Can't do a lot about their genetic predisposition, but you can do something about their environmental exposure. And all of that are things that are amenable to technology and technology-enabled interventions. And that's what we call the social determinants of health. And these are buzzwords right now in healthcare. These are the things that drive payers insane. They don't know how to tackle this. This is where they're throwing massive amounts of money, health systems, insurance payers, because they run around in circles trying to take care of very complex patients or patients that they think are at risk, that their data is saying, predicting are going to be costly in the future. And it's not based on their diabetes or their control over their diabetes. It's based on all these other things that they can't control. So this is where your technology can be really helpful. A really interesting survey by a group, Linkage, that actually asked seniors about technology and their use of technology and what they wanted to use technology for that you would find interesting. Because this really puts in perspective, no matter what I want to do or what you want to do, what are they saying they want to use technology for? So, you know, seniors like phones. Maybe they're not using smartphones as much as we want them to yet, but they're using them. But they all have cell phones, maybe not smartphones. And I found this to be the most interesting. What do they find the most benefit in technology? And so it's for social stuff, not necessarily healthcare stuff. Logging onto Social Security, managing financial, dealing with entertainment and news, sending photographs, connecting with their family. This made me sad as a doctor because I was like, oh, I want to help, you know, I want to connect with them. They don't care. They don't want to manage their CHF or their diabetes. Look at that, it's really low. I found that fascinating. But this doesn't mean that their caregiver, me, their daughter who's helping manage the parent, right, or their provider can't engage them in that. So that's the take-home message here, that perhaps they don't know or they're not interested, but it doesn't mean that a third party that's engaged in their care is not. I found this really fascinating. And so that's where I bring in the provider perspective. And that's that in reality, you know, maybe they're not interested in that, but the things that someone like me would be interested in using technology for are things like medication management, adherence, care coordination, population health management, caregiver education support, and activity monitoring. So this is a 78-year-old guy who learned how to skateboard at 65. He's a really cool dude. I just want to remind you that, you know, everyone wants better change, but but nobody really wants to change. And so no matter what we do, it's important that you build in resources to support and train people. No matter what their age, it's just really scary to change. So thank you. Really look forward to hearing everyone else's talk.
Should I turn that up? I do. Let's see what we've got. Good evening. Can you hear me? I can't quite hear myself, so. I'm Linda Zimmer, and I'm the director of IRIS OC. I'm here to talk about IRIS and to underscore and give some perspective on how maybe technology can help us grow healthy lives if we work together with all of those wonderful statistics that we saw there. So because I'm sure we're all here because we're interested in healthy aging, you know the statistics. We've just seen some really compelling reasons why we have to build healthy into the mix, into the factors that allow us to adapt to both aging and longevity, underscoring what Margarita said. So perhaps we can stipulate three important things that are buried in some of those statistics that we just saw. The first one is that almost all health is local. And what I mean by that is that our health and being healthy is influenced by where we live, the resources in our local community, and our social connections within that community. And it's more a factor of our health style, our lifestyle, as well as our family and friends, as it is our genetic code. So it's really key that we keep in mind that health is local. Another thing that we can stipulate here is that quality of life matters. It matters to our well-being and our health. It's not just that we want the longevity, it's that we want a cohort of people around us who can help us, support us, and give us the mental and social stimulation that we need to feel purpose in our life. Problem is, this quality of living is very individual. We want choice, and baby boomers especially are used to owning it and taking care of it. And what this quality of living being individualized means is that it's very personalized, and it hands us a puzzle that we call do-it-yourself aging. It's a puzzle we're all being handed because we want quality of life, we want longevity, but we now have to become designers of our own health ecosystem. And that, of course, brings a lot of problems with it. We don't know how to do it, where to do it, who can help, where can we go to turn for those supports. And of course, most of us define quality of life or quality of living as being at home while we age. But that brings its own problems of isolation, especially as our mobility becomes less and less. And the third thing I think we can all agree on, especially based on what we just heard, is that it takes a community. It takes a robust, thriving community of people, technology, and local resources to come together to keep us healthy, and not just manage our health, but to keep us healthy within these quality of life factors. So we came to CALIT2 as a collaborator and asked, so what technologies can take all this complexity and meld it together so that we can create some kind of a technology that will help with local resources, with this do-it-yourself aging puzzle, and then how do we build these health cohorts of people and technologies and organizations and institutions that all contribute to this health within our life. And the platform that we're working on is called IRIS OC. And our call to action is, let's build a healthy life around you. And that around term is very important because we mean it on both levels. How can we build it around you and support your choices about your life through longevity? But also, how can we build a community of support around you? And we feel we can do that together using the IRIS OC platform. So what is it? Well, it's a digital platform where Orange County adults, it's very locally oriented, can come together and connect to local resources. Many people do not know what local resources are available in the community to tap into, and or they don't know how to navigate them. Also to build these health cohorts with each other, with caregivers, as well as with the institutions and healthcare providers that we interface with. Healthy life literacy is key to this, knowing how to live a healthy life, who's there to help, answering those DIY questions. And most importantly, perhaps, is to share data so that we can manage a plethora of resources, but also to aggregate that data so that we can get both those, so we and our caregivers can get insight into what the state of our health is and what we're doing that's working and not working. So the tweet version of this is IRIS is a local, very locally focused digital community where we work together to build healthy lives. And what's it good for? On a practical level, older adults in Orange County and or their caregivers use the platform for various practical things. How can I fulfill my basic needs? If there's food insecurity, IRIS OC is a place to go to figure out where I can get assistance with that. But also just to optimize our wellness, to support the independence and living in our home that we want, but equally importantly is to find purpose through civic engagement and social connections, and uniquely be able to aggregate personal data so that we can share that data with key individuals and key institutions and key providers within our life, so that this platform enables the sharing of this data so that we can have both insight and empowerment into our health. So it aggregates a lot of tools that we need, the key tools that we need in order to enable or empower such a healthy living. So it brings together an important, what we call an almanac of information, where there's easy to access information, multimedia, social media, as more and more of us are turning to each other to help manage our strategies. A community where we can build social connections, even if we're a bit isolated, but most importantly, we can expand our social connections that encourage that health and well-being. A resource locator for those local resources. Services marketplace, where older individuals and their caregivers can go and find those resources. And then these last two, the personal data manager allows for alerts and reminders, but also third-party apps can be integrated into this, so that that Fitbit that you're wearing or that your loved one is wearing can be integrated into this, and this information can be shared. Sharing is the heart of IRIS OC. So it's very important that as we get people here, that they understand the value of sharing this data with each other, with the community, with providers, with caregivers. So this platform is powered by these resources and personal tools and these social connections. So it's very member-centered. The member, the individual that's part of this has tools to share with caregivers in whatever form that caregiver is. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be healthcare providers, so that what they can create around them is that support mechanism. But also health organizations here can use this to provide education and information directly to an individual or take benefit of aggregated data, a very local aggregated data of what the health status of Orange County older adults looks like and what insight they can take from that, which obviously is a missing piece right now. And then finally, these local resources be able to be available so that members, caregivers are aware of the choices that they have within the community to support their health and well-being. But unique to IRIS is a personal data vault. In most of these platforms that we're used to, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, we don't own any of that data. It belongs to someone else. On Iris, you control your personal data. You own it, you can delete it, you can download it. And what is important is that you can share this data, as I've said over and over. But because of the way the database is driven by this personal data vault, individuals can decide who and what and where they want to share this information. So they can turn those permissions on and off. They own the data, and if they choose not to share the data with their healthcare payer, they don't have to do that. However, there can also be some very good incentives for there to do that. So on a person by person, entity by entity, they can choose whether they want to share this information or not. So it's a very unique build where this aggregated data is an opt-in design. So we've made it private by design to overcome some of those trust issues that are inherent in using these kinds of digital platforms where our data is out there, we lose control of it, and we have no privacy. So it's been designed for trust, specifically so that people have access to these tools and are assured of their privacy so that they can embrace the power of these kinds of social technologies to build their lives in a healthy, positive, and civically engaged way. So that is Iris OC. We are delighted to be collaborating with CALIT2 on the build-out of this platform, and we welcome your questions. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Randy Wei. I'm the Chief Radiation Oncology Resident at UC Irvine Medical Center. And I'm very happy to be collaborating with CALIT2 on this very exciting project with not only myself, but Dr. Solomon Liao, who's the Director for Palliative Medicine and Geriatrics, as well as Dr. Padma Galur, who was here at UCI and now has gone to Duke, as well as the talented CALIT team here, the hardware, and also the undergraduates. Fantastic. So, you know, we're here for technology for healthy aging, but we're really for technology for healthy living. And one of the ideas is that for this talk is I wanted to look at how we can improve opioid safety in seniors. So disclosure, I'm not a geriatrician, I'm a radiation oncologist. But many of my patients are greater than 65-year-old and have cancer-related pain, chronic pain, you know, as patients get older. And one thing I really love to do is, because I'm in radiation oncology, I get to sit down and spend time with patients and talk to them about their problems and listen to and find knowledge gaps and find deficiencies in healthcare and come up with a solution. So the graying of America, this is a tsunami. Okay, so we already know about some of the data, but in 2030, 1 in every 5 Americans is going to be greater than 65 years old. 2050, 89 million Americans are going to be greater than 65 years old. This is huge in the next 30 years. I just imagine 15 to 20% of these seniors have mild cognitive impairment, but still can function in their own homes. And right now, if Medicare expenditure alone is $555 billion in 2011. In 2020, it's going to be $903 billion. Imagine 2050 when it's 89 million Americans. It's going to be amazing unless we utilize technology to improve the efficiencies of healthcare. So this is a model for healthy aging and disease. So as you can see here on the side is the level of function, 0 to 100%, age and years. So this is for a male. 21-year-old is when they reach their full functional capacity. At 65 years old, that's just because it's just an artificial mark for age for aging. 76 is the U.S. consensus guidelines for the average life of a male. And as you can see, as time goes on, when you're young, you eventually become fully dependent, and then you plateau, and at 65, so you start to, become aged, and you start to, have medical problems, and then you start to lose functional dependence, requiring nursing care, caregivers, your families. And that gets worse, you get your loss of autonomy in the yellow line, and that requires nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and then black is death. And then so there's two parts here. So as you can see here, heart disease and cancer and multiple drugs, accidents, infections can reduce your ability for a healthy life. Whereas when you're green, you move over, new drugs, improved nutrition, public health, and can technology improve healthy aging, healthy life, increasing your lifespan, increasing your functional dependence to live at home, less autonomy, and then delay death, delay being in that black line, okay? So can we use technology to improve access to healthcare? So as we can see in the top right, this is very, very common. The health alert, you fall down, you push the button. That's been in the 80s. You hear it on the television. Telemedicine is the next big thing. In 2013, there were 5.7 million telemedicine consultations. It is going to go to 130 million in 2018, according to one consensus. In the left, apps. We talked about apps. One of the issues is that we have to, how do you get people to, use the smartphones to install the apps? There's a barrier to installation. Smart homes of the future, knowing where where the senior is, where your parents are in the room. If they fell and they haven't moved, this is a great technology. And seniors and technology use. So for people going online, this is a Pew Research Center showing that 86% of adults in 2013 go online. Seniors, 65 years and older, 59%. But you can see that as time goes on, as the graying of America, baby boomers who are using an iPhone are going to continue using it, and that number is going to get bigger and bigger. And then on the right is just the adoption of cell phone, internet, and broadband. So you can see that for 65 years and older, there's a slightly lag in terms of adoption for these technologies, communication. And so in Georgetown, the business school, they did a survey of 1,200 Americans, the 34 to 67-year-old. 90% of these respondents agree that independence and access to quality of health care is important. And of course, 73% will want to age at home. And then the baby boomers, those who are born before 1955, I guess the leading edge, those are near 1955. 62% are comfortable using technology, and 2/3 would pay $25 to $499 per month if technology kept them at home. And so next I want to talk about opioids. So you open the page, you see like the Los Angeles Times, the opioid problem, opioid epidemic. Top right, President Obama had, even had Opioid Awareness Week in November, and then in PBS Frontline, how bad is the opioid epidemic? It's amazingly, it's horrible, the opioid epidemic. Drug overdose deaths in 2014, 19,000, more than heroin, benzodiazepines, and cocaine. And if you actually look at, opioid-related deaths, and opioid complications, it's more than car accidents, deaths in the United States. And the thing is that, prescription opioids does not, the abuse and misuse is not just for general population, not just for the young kids, it's also for seniors as well. And as you can see here, just from, just going on the web and looking at collecting, going to the websites, you can see that opioid use among seniors is a growing concern. Seniors are overdosing on opioids. They're misusing it. They're suffering from too much opioids and sometimes suffering from too little because a lot of times we feel like we can't trust our seniors about taking their medications, so we actually sometimes undertreat pain. So I'll give you some case scenarios. So meet Rose. She's a 65-year-old widow, one daughter. Has diabetes, hypertension, rheumatoid arthritis. She lives alone in Tustin, has some friends, some social, but she does I mean, this is an example, but she does take 80 milligrams of oxycodone, which is very strong opioids, a lot of pain. And she takes a second within 2 hours because she forgets that she took this medication 2 hours ago. And then she becomes dizzy, falls, and breaks her hips. And when we know that, in the medical community, you break your hip, you're going to have very poor quality of life, you're not going to move, and then you're going to form blood clots and infections, and it just spirals under control. So how do we improve medication safety? Meet Chris. He's a 71-year-old male. No children, lives in Huntington Beach, and he's recently discharged from the hospital after diagnosis for metastatic prostate cancer. And it's very painful with metastatic disease. And because he lives alone, he has trouble, getting, transport or getting someone to bring him to his medical oncology appointment, and he has a lot of pain. So how can we monitor Chris's pain, at home? And not having our seniors, get on the road and try to drive to the hospital to see a doctor every 4 weeks or even 2 weeks if your pain's not controlled to titrate medication. So prescription opioids in seniors. Well, pain is very prevalent in seniors. 25 to 50% of elderly in home have some pain or another, because as you age, you get chronic pain, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, degenerative joint disease. It's very common, and opioids are unfortunately one of the things that we give to patients for that. In a nursing home, 75% is very common. And the CDC reports that that seniors 65 and older, 40% take 5 or more medications. And of that, many of these patients have very poor health literacy. They don't, you don't have the doctors or nurses talking to them, educating them about taking their medication appropriately, especially opioids. When do you take it? You take it 30 minutes before. If your pain's not better, you take it again. The PRN dose is just very complicated. For Medicare beneficiaries, from the U.S. Office of Inspector General, 12 million Medicare beneficiaries received at least one opioid prescription painkiller in 2015. That cost the United States Medicare $4.1 billion. And then also in 2006 to 2012, over a gap of 6 years, you've seen that elderly patients increased their emergency department visits by 78%, and because of that, 11% is because of opioids. So in terms of the physiology of aging, why is it that elderly people have higher rates of opioid-related side effects? Well, first of all, as you get older, your kidneys function less, your liver functions less. And that means your clearance of the opioid byproducts become less and less, so that opioids stay in your system a lot longer. Also, you get reduced intestinal absorption. So patients will be taking more and more because they're not absorbing the medication. Polypharmacy, it's a huge problem. A lot of the elderly are getting multiple medications, and they can have medications kind of counteract opioids or extend the life of the opioids. Depression, anxiety, disorientation, memory loss, isolation. A lot of times people can be taking the medication, just to dull the pain and the depression. So for healthcare, what are the challenges? As we had heard before, it's medication adherence. How frequently are you taking the medication? I'm asking my patients. How are you taking it correctly? How effective is it helping you with your pain? And with all these subjective data points, can I even adjust your pain medication up or down? Am I going to even trust that you do that? And so, out there in the world, there's reminders. Some very little smart caps. That's been in the 1980s. They look a little prettier now. You have your traditional little pill strip where you can load your pills. The bottom right, safety. So these are really clunky, large devices that dispense based on timers. Or little combination locks, and then the IoT, Internet of Things. So a pill bottle that opens or closes your lid, and that information gets transferred online, so the doctor can review it. But there's nothing, and also there's no circle for security. So what we have been working on is a patient-initiated controlled analgesic recorded dispenser, an oral PCA. Just like you have an IV PCA at the hospital where you keep pushing your pain medication when you need it, this is an oral PCA for home. And so how does it work? Well, it's the right person, the right time, the right dose. You have a thumbprint sensor, and it detects the right person. The physician can program, in the future, can program it remotely, but in this case, nurses will program it, or pharmacists program it. can dispense 1, 2, 3, 4, however the physician wants. It can also determine, if it's the right time, it will give you the medication. If it's not the right time, it will prevent you from doing it. But it will record the attempt so that the physician will know that you needed another dose, but you couldn't get it. So that will factor into how the physician treats your pain. It has location safeties in terms of location. It's stolen or it's tampered. So like I said, data is collected, number of attempts, unauthorized attempts, and we're developing an open developer platform with machine learning. You have our device, Picard, first prototype, first device. You're going to have multiple competing devices. We're going to develop a API developer kit. That's the future, where you can collate all this intelligent data. You're going to have smart watches data from Fitbit CareKit. You can use Twilio to, every time you dispense something, you trigger an app or your phone that will ask you in 30 minutes after you dispense the pill, what's your pain now? What's your pain then? So that information can then be developed into an artificial intelligence platform, displayed, and educate the patient on how you're taking the medication. Is it affecting your walk? Is it affecting your subjective patient-reported outcome? And then it can also actually recommend what you should take, what medication you should adjust for the physician. So use case scenarios, like I mentioned, keeping seniors at home for a longer time and safer for medication adherence. So using machine learning, if the patient's not taking medication properly or taking more than they need, can the artificial intelligence platform say, this patient needs to be, a nurse should call this patient and say, you should take care of this patient, maybe see him earlier. Having a wearable device with this paired will also show whether the patient's improving functionally, active. And also, also the most important is a safe alert for medication. So just like having a safe alert for falls, safe alert for medication use, which is very important for patients. So lastly, sorry if it's taking a long time, but I want to talk, how do we improve technology adoption in seniors? So a lot of times seniors will say, well, this product is not for me. Well, we have to, improve our design thinking. We have to start with the user, the seniors. We have to be doing focus groups, talking to them, talking to core users, and how and seniors have their own habits. Just like I have my own habits. We need to be able to integrate our technology into their already pre-existing habits, so that we don't really disrupt their environment, but we actually assist. Also, we need to reframe the financial and opportunity costs. We already heard how expensive, how Medicare is going down, how our elderly patients are getting crunched for financially. So what we need to do is we need to say that this technology will reduce the need for institutional care, reduce the number of caregiver hours that you have to pay for someone to see you, because you're able to use this device to maintain autonomy and live longer at home, taking your medications properly. Also, we will need to appeal to the adult-age children. We mentioned about having the caregiver, the family member, be involved. This is something that we need to push to our patients. And it's a double-edged sword. One of the things that I read in an article is, what if I fall? Using this those safety devices. Like, what if I fall? Well, will that trigger my kids to put me in a nursing home? I think the biggest fear is that the technology will find that this patient is deficient, and then we'll put them in nursing care. But we have to rephrase that. It's a marketing issue. And then most important, and lastly, aging into technology. We have to slowly integrate technology from the beginning. And we already are, because as we're using, everyone probably here has smartphones, we're adapting to it. And especially so those that are 80 now, it may be a little bit more difficult. But now that we're getting older, we're getting used to technology. These more advanced devices, will hopefully be more adopted. So I thank you very much, and these are my collaborators. Thank you.
I think we're okay. Just okay. Yeah.
All right, great, thanks. Where's the start button here? Oops. There we go, got it. Thank you. All right, thank you. I'm going to continue the discussion about how we might be using technology to help us age well and stay healthy. My name is Mark Bachman. I'm the director of the eHealth Collaboratory at CALIT2 Irvine. And at CALIT2 and eHealth, we are focused on how we might bring technology to help our lives and help us be healthier. But I want to make an important point, because when you talk to people like me who love technology, you tend to hear a lot all about technology, and that's not what this is about. It's about health. And we have to recognize that the purpose of technology is empowerment. It's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be part of a solution. And so in our world, we really focus on the idea that technology should empower health. And that means empowering the patient. That means empowering the people around the patient. And it means empowering the community as well. So when we think about empowering health, we're empowering many people, not just the person who's sick. We do this work here at the eHealth Collaboratory, and it's actually on the 3rd floor, and there's a lot of really interesting projects going on there. We typically have about 15 to 20 projects ongoing in the collaboratory. And the reason we call it a collaboratory is because every project we do is a collaboration. It must be a collaboration for us to take that project on. And when I say collaboration, I mean typically it's going to be a collaboration with a technology-focused researcher and someone who has expertise in healthcare or in sociology, psychology, medicine, and so forth. And that's the way that we can produce really great results when we want to apply technology to healthcare. And so we call it eHealth, and we always make this point that the E in eHealth does not mean electronic health. It means empowering health. And that's the theme that we want to keep reminding ourselves and reminding our students, that the role of technology is to be part of a solution and to empower people. So I'm very also pleased to say that a large number of our projects are driven by students. They're our workforce, and they're also our inspiration. One of the great benefits to working at the university is I get to work with so many young people, and I get to sort of enjoy that energy. But these are our future. These are the people who are going to be taking care of us as we get older. So I think it's important that we engage students early on to get them excited and get them inspired by the kinds of things that they can do with technology for me as I get older and for all of us. And right now we have 14 students working in eHealth on projects related to healthy aging. By the way, some of them are here now, so during the reception I'd love to introduce you to them so you can see the future of our healthy aging technology. All right, so let me talk a little bit about what getting older and health and so forth. So there's as we get older, there are things that we do, sort of stereotypical, right? We can watch TV, and we can take up hobbies like painting, and we can play dominoes, and we can read, and we can play cards, we can do jigsaw puzzles, we can go fishing, we can hang out and be social. And of course, what I think many seniors do is babysit their grandchildren. So it's a lot of things that we can do, and these are sort of stereotypical. If you go on the internet, for example, and you search activities for seniors, these are the kind of things that are going to come up. But I'd like to propose 2 more activities for us as we get older. First of all, I think we should be rocking. We should be rock and roll. So this is all of us, I think, in our hearts, right? So rock and roll, I'm going to claim, is good for you. And also, I think we should be playing video games. Here's a video game grandma taking on Viper Boy 27. And I claim that video games actually help us stay healthy. And I'm going to show you that and show you how we're developing technology at CALIT2 for that purpose. So first, let me start with music. Actually, there's a lot of very good evidence that music stimulates neurological repair and helps make us healthy. I only have 10 minutes to talk to you, so I'm not going to go into it, but I'd love to, if we get a chance to talk, I'll talk your ear off about all the benefits of music to staying healthy, especially as we get older and we start to have to encounter more neurological problems. So here's some data showing how the brain is stimulated as we listen to music. But also, music also promotes socialization. It's well known that if people get together and participate in music, that they will socialize. And music also stimulates movement. I guarantee if I start playing music right now, if I start playing Journey, half this room is going to be moving without realizing it. Their head's going to be going back and forth. Their feet will be tapping and so forth. So music stimulates movement as well. Okay. Now, here's the thing about music. So it's actually good for you. It's good. You should be listening to music all the time. But even more importantly, to get the full benefit, especially the neurological benefit, music requires participation. It's not enough really to listen to it. Listen to it will help because it's relaxing and so forth, but it requires participation. And unfortunately, musical instruments are not suited. They're not designed for ordinary people to play. It takes years of training typically to play a musical instrument, and especially if you have disabilities, it's very difficult. So at UCI here, we focus on how do we enable ordinary people who aren't trained in music or people who have disabilities to participate in this active participation of music, and here's where technology can play a role. So we build musical instruments out of stuffed animals. We build musical instruments out of furniture. We build musical instruments out of interesting things, and things that are actually make easier to play. And then what we do is we connect it to a computer, and the computer now can help with making the music sound good. So that it's sort of like karaoke for your hands in a way. But what this allows you to do, to have people who are not trained in music or maybe have disability to actively participate in music. And here's an example. These two students who helped me develop this. The student on the left is playing a guitar. She's a guitarist. She's actually quite an accomplished musician. And the student on the right doesn't know how to play any musical instrument. She's playing Peter the Anteater. You can see right here. And that Peter the Anteater has sensors inside and a small microprocessor that converts, when she squeezes Peter the Anteater's hand and shakes Peter the Anteater, converts that into music. And they can play together now. Two people who have very different levels of skill can now participate in active musical expression. So it's very exciting. Here's a little video just to show you how some of it works. This is a wearable technology we developed. It's fabric-based sensors. And you can see here that when we hook these things up to a computer, oops, you getting sound? Let me see. Yeah. So you can see now it's very easy for us to imagine the types of devices we can build that make music easy to participate in, yet you're still getting the real benefit of participation. You're not just pressing a button and listening. You can actually turn this into real musical instruments. Okay, so now the next point I want to make is about video gaming. I want to tell you that video games are good for you because when I was growing up, I used to play video games. I was one of the early generations, the Space Invaders and these kinds of games. And I was told my entire life how bad video games are for you. Actually, there is a lot of danger to video games, but what recent studies have shown, and a lot of studies are being made on this now, is that there's a lot of opportunity for video games to be very good for you. And there's lots of research out there and showing how video games can improve cognition, can help you repair neurological damage and so forth. And here's a snapshot of actual neurological improvement due to video gaming itself. So there's actually very respected research that shows that video gaming can in fact help you. And we've seen that ourselves. You can use video games in many ways to help. For example, video games in fun are diversionary. So if someone is suffering from stress or from pain, they don't have to take opioids if they have something that is very engaging, such as a video game. It promotes movement, so we can actually enable people to move even though they may not want to move, may not realize they're moving. Games provide mental challenges. Games can be actually very social. Games can stimulate emotions. Most of the time it's frustration and anger because I didn't get my, get to my level, but actually many emotions can be stimulated. Something else you have to realize, that video games are inherently quantitative. Everything that happens in a video game is tracked quantitatively, so you have data. Video games provide short-term and long-term goals, and that's actually a very big deal. And games can go at your pace, so you don't have to go at the same pace as everyone else. If you're in a class learning meditation and you're not keeping up, then you're going to fall behind. But games allow you to go at your own pace, and games can be smart enough to adapt to your individual needs. So there's actually a lot of benefit to video games. Now, we design a lot of video games, and I think we've learned a few things about designing video games for health. And I'm going to tell you the two biggest mistakes that you can make when designing a video game for health. The first mistake, and this is a mistake that all my computer science students and colleagues make, is they want to build an awesome game. I get it. That's why they're excited about video games. They want to build a very awesome, immersive game and so forth. But that's not what it's about. It's not about building an awesome game. It's about building a healthy game. The second thing, the big mistake, is that people, I don't know why, people want to build a game to do what you can already do, to basically just duplicate what you can already do. And this picture is a good example of that. This is a great example. So here's a video game of a woman using a little controller to do knitting. And, you know, that's something she could do anyway. So why would you build a game to do that? Those are actually very common pitfalls. Instead, the best practices are to focus your development on accomplishing the health goals. What are those health goals? If you want someone to move in a certain way so they can exercise their core, so they have more confidence on their balance, then it should encourage the right kind of movements. Look for non-obvious ways to accomplish user activity. If you just basically have a video game that's basically telling you move this way, people can get very bored very quickly. You're looking for ways to get them to do things that they don't realize they're doing, okay? A third thing, and this is really important, is you have to create something for the user to invest in. Because almost all health games require long-term commitment. You're not going to play that game once and suddenly get healthy. You're going to play that game over the course of many months. And so people have to invest in it. They have to want to come back to that game. And it's not enough to say that you're getting healthy. That's actually, of course, why you're playing the game, but that's not enough for people to invest in. They have to invest in your story, or maybe there's a social element to it, or maybe there's some other part to it where their friends are participating or so forth. So you have to build an engaging, addictive game. It doesn't have to be an awesome, immersive game, but it has to be addictive. It has to have something to invest in. And finally, the game should have loads and loads of short-term goals and rewards, because usually the thing we're asking people to do is not that easy to do. If I'm asking someone to exercise, or if I'm asking someone to do a mental challenge, it actually hurts. Even though it might be kind of fun, people still start to give up. But if you can give them small goals, and then you made it to the next level, they will keep going on. And so those are sort of the 4 guidelines to building a video game for health. So maybe something more like this. Here we have a social element. 2 players are playing with each other. They're not using a mouse controller, which is actually, that's not very healthy to use a mouse controller, but something that actually encourages exercise in this case. And it's, it's a fun game. So that's the kind of thing that we want to do. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. But I do think that, there's a huge opportunity. This is actually new territory. It's a huge opportunity to really exploit those things that we normally think, oh, they can't be healthy because they're fun. They are fun, and they're healthy. So I look forward to talking to you and maybe getting your feedback on how we can use music and video games to make us healthy. I'll see you in the not-too-distant future. Thank you.
Hi, welcome everybody. Mark, that was a great segue to my talk, where basically what we do is we use video games and technology to help people with neurologic injury. And it's no surprise because I actually I was a PhD student in Professor Bachman's lab, so a lot of the technology that you're going to see here, some of it actually came from CALIT, and it came from Professor Bachman's lab and Professor Rankensmeyer's lab. So our company name is Flint Rehab. I'm the president of the company, and we build tools for people with stroke, brain injury, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury. Our average population is 75 years of age, and that's why I'm here today. So basically, what happens when someone has a stroke? Every 35 seconds in the US, someone has a stroke. It comes out to about 700,000 people every year in the US. It's the largest cause of adult disability in the US. And when someone has a stroke, they rush to the hospital, and they have a team of therapists, physicians, and nurses helping them recover. And you have these great caregivers helping them recover. Unfortunately, after that, their HMO cuts them off, and they have to go home. And there's actually about a 3-week period of time after they're discharged from inpatient that they don't see anyone. They're actually just go home and they're waiting for their outpatient stay. Once they go to outpatient, they're only there for once or twice a week for a few hours. The rest of the time, they're at home, and guess what? They're not doing anything. These people are basically, they're in inpatient rehab, and during that time, they're teaching them how to wheel themselves around in a wheelchair and barely escape and get out of the hospital. That's what they're doing. So what's currently happening is the therapists are giving them sheets of exercises to take home, and the sheets of exercises say, move your thumb from your finger, move your thumb and touch your first finger 5 times. Great. Now move your thumb and touch it to your second finger 5 times. And then they'll try to give them sheets of exercises on stretching and things like that, and no one does it. The compliance is incredibly low, and it's completely an outdated system. I mean, it's insane that this is still going on. So that's where we came in, and what we do is we use technology to empower people to take control of their life after they've had a neurologic injury, and we also provide the tools for the therapists to be able to use technology in a way that makes their standard of practice better, and that allows them to take care of people without having to spend one-on-one time with them. Now, our approach is that we want to create an ecosystem for recovery. We don't want to just create a tool that someone takes home, because ultimately what happens is a stroke is more than just about doing exercise. Rehabilitation is more than just about doing exercise. It's about getting people to not be depressed. It's about getting people the right information. And then, of course, it's about getting them to enjoy what they're doing after they've had a stroke. So the way that we do that is, first of all, we provide education. If you go on flintrehab.com, we have about 260 articles about stroke education prevention. And if you look up, for example, stroke exercise, we're the #1 spot. We're beating WebMD. So people like to come and listen to what we have to say, and ultimately that leads them to a free journey of how to cope with what has just happened to them. The second thing that we've just implemented is we're building a community. And basically what we've done is we've created the world's most active stroke group on Facebook. And what that means is that someone posts, like this individual over here, posts throwing in the towel. This just happened today. And you can see within a few hours, there's 34 people who have commented on that post saying, you can do it, you know, here's some ways that you can help yourself, and so forth. And I think this is crucial. I think people need guidance more than just from a physician. The physician's going to provide really good information, but they need that encouragement from other people who have been in the same spot and who can help them. And finally, the more exciting stuff is we build a lot of tools for rehabilitation. And we like to take the approach that we want to build both hardware and software that is an enabler for people with neurologic injury. And I'll just for the sake of time today, I'll just go into 3 of those technologies that we've built. So it looks like our video player for this, and let me just double check here. Yeah, the video player for this computer isn't working, so I'll throw up another video while we're talking. Okay, I'll just mute that for now. So the first product we developed was actually developed at UCI in CALIT, and it's called the Music Glove. And it's a hand rehabilitation device for people with neurologic injury. And the way it works is you put this sensorized glove on, and you basically are playing Guitar Hero along to songs. And what you can see here is instead of button mashing a controller, you're actually making very specific gripping movements, like key pinch grip, pincer grasp. These are the most important movements for regaining hand function. And again, you're getting all the benefits of music participation. And ultimately what it means is that people are making a lot of movement. So instead of giving someone sheets of exercises to say, try to move your finger to your thumb 100 times, here you're just playing through a series of games. And we've done randomized control trials both with chronic, subacute stroke, spinal cord injury, and the results are always the same. There's significant improvement pre to post when you compare it to just conventional tabletop exercise. And it's really no surprise because rehab is a lot like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you sit on a bench and you don't lift any weights, you're clearly not going to get stronger. It's the exact same thing with rehabilitation. When you are doing your rehab, it's not good enough just to lazily move your fingers one to the other. You actually have to do it with intent. There has to be a high intensity. There has to be a lot of movement in order to see any results. And this is ultimately what the Music Glove does. Now, the one issue with the Music Glove is that it only works for the hands. So we've developed additional tools here for more than just the hands, for the whole body. And let me just jump into another technology we have here. So there's two issues with the Music Glove. The first is it only works on the hand, and the second is that it costs about $400. Now the issue with that is that a lot of individuals with a stroke are basically out of work. So we wanted to create a device that people could afford and that was useful for them. And what we ended up with is a product a lot like P90X. Are you guys familiar with P90X? It's basically a big bulky guy doing exercise videos and you're following along with them. So we created the stroke rehabilitation P90X. And essentially what it is you replace that big bulky guy with a therapist and you create enough videos for people who want to work on specific body parts, and you segment it by videos for people who can't move at all to people who can move a lot. So I'll just show you just a quick clip here. So here's a few therapists, and basically this program, it's an online program. You go to flintfit.com and you can look at videos for the hand, the arms, the core, the legs, and again, you have the therapist showing you exactly what to do and you're just following along. Now the nice thing here is that you can schedule videos for each day of the week, and when you log in, it'll say, all right, here are your 3 videos for the day. You watch your videos, it tracks your progress, it tracks to see if you've done the videos and so forth, and then ultimately your therapist can also see what you've done. So one huge motivator for people who need to do therapy is the homework effect, which is if a therapist tells you to do exercise and you know that there's no way that they're going to know if you did that exercise, they're not going to do it. But here, with Music Glove, with FlintFit, you can't not do it. You have to do the actual exercise, and your therapist is going to know, so you're going to try harder. All right, and I'll show you one last technology before I finish. So this product's coming out next month, and a question you may have is, the videos are great, but how do I know how much they've actually done? How can I actually quantify it? And that's why we developed FitMe. FitMe stands for Fitness Motion Interface, and it's essentially a virtual reality gym for pre and post rehab, and we're going to expand this just into general wellness and general exercise. And essentially what you have here is these 2 pucks. You have a blue puck and you have a yellow puck. And these pucks have a bunch of sensors in them, and they connect wirelessly to that little blue dongle that you see on the corner there. And what you do here is you have a bunch of different exercises. You have 60 different exercises, and you select the exercises that are appropriate for you. So for example, this exercise is a reach to target. So you put 1 puck on one side, 1 puck on the other, and you click start, and it tells you how many reps you have to do, and there's a mini game in there that's motivating you to do the exercise. Then after those 60 seconds, you go on to the next exercise. So it's very much like going to the gym, where you're going to be doing 10, 20 exercises, different exercises when you go to the gym. The difference here is you can do this from the comfort of your own home, and all of these exercises were developed for specifically for individuals with neurologic injury. Now, the nice thing is that we can create different packs. So the first pack is going to be the neuro pack, and the next pack can be a more general exercise pack that gets people up and moving and more excited about exercising every day. So this is an example for the clinician if they want to schedule a more specific regimen for the individual. And here you could see the full body. The clinician just selects arm, core, hand, or legs, and they just add different exercises to their cue, and then they just send them those exercises, and then the individual has to do those exercises. The therapist can see exactly how many reps they've done and all that good stuff. All right, that's it. Thank you.
It's working? Can you hear me? Okay. I don't have fancy videos, so I'll try to entertain you here. I'm Jay Cunin. I wear a number of hats, including working with Applied Innovation here. But I've been asked to wear my investor hat for my remarks tonight and answer what are investors looking for in this area. And it's a big area, and it's a big set of questions, and I can't answer them all in 10 minutes. So kind of mashed together a few talks that I've given recently and have not adapted it to recent innovation or recent changes, because 2 days into the apocalypse, I have no idea what's going to happen. So one thing we know, seniors are the major consumers of healthcare services, right? We know that. We know that the U.S. healthcare system, in quotes, is really moving everything toward the lowest cost venues, settings of care, and the lowest cost providers. The lowest cost venue is generally home, and the lowest cost provider is son or daughter, usually. And there's all kinds of gradations in between, and I'm not going to get into that. But the system as a whole is adapting to this push toward more convenience and lower cost by lots of different mechanisms, including the return of house calls. I'm from San Diego. We have a doc there who 10, 15 years ago really created a new house call service and spent about 5 years lobbying Congress so that as of now, as of 5 or 6 years ago, every house call is covered by Medicare. All right, so Medicare now pays for these things. Okay, in the healthcare business, this is a very large, complex business. As you know, it's 20% or so of the GDP. There's basically two business models that work, right? You save payers money, or you save doctors hassle. All right, everything else is kind of subsidiary to that. This is business models. So if you're looking to commercialize something, the rest, we can do that. If you're looking to commercialize something, any of these terrific technologies that we've heard about or that are being worked on here at UCI or anywhere else, they're great to show and they're great to play with, but in order to make them usable and useful to people, you got to get them into the commercial world. Second point, that healthy aging is not just healthcare. We've heard about all that as well, right? Healthcare is being driven to home. People do want to stay independent and stay at home. And that's driving up the demand for home healthcare and as well home care. I'm also on the board of a nonprofit retirement community, we've started up a home care operation as well, and I've gotten into a lot of details here, which I'll come back to. Challenges to aging at home. The number one challenge for people at home is really the isolation and the loneliness. And then, you know, the ability to get places and the ability to communicate with people, as well as access to health care and just the help with activities of daily life. And so this has led to two kinds of businesses. Home health care, which is what we usually think of when we talk about home care, is really medical care. And it's delivered by medical professionals. And it's typically reimbursed. Right now, most of it is reimbursed by Medicare and Medicaid, or Medi-Cal as we call it here. And it is about a $90 billion business, which is actually tiny considering the health care business is somewhere between $2 and $3 trillion. Home care is non-medical care. It's the term of art is activities of daily living. People coming in to help mom get dressed, cook, clean, do laundry, just play games, whatever it is. This is not reimbursed. This is paid out of pocket by the customer, or more likely the customer's family. Okay? In-home health care, products that you're delivering or using typically need to be approved by the FDA because it's being used in health care. In home care, you're dealing with consumer products. So you can sell a video game to mom without any problems, unless you're making some claim that it has some health benefit. And this is delivered by unskilled labor. These are minimum wage people, typically. The asterisk means they're typically bonded and insured. And as of 2016 in California, these companies have to be licensed. There are a lot of services that are provided to seniors, right? You've heard of most of these. You know, I've heard from an investor point of view, people come in and say, this is an Uber for seniors. And I say, okay, but there already is an Uber for seniors, right? It's called Uber. All right. So what we're looking at with technologies is how do you incorporate a technology into one of these large-scale service operations? Healthcare delivery, home care delivery, whatever it is. If you were at the Consumer Electronics Show this year, you would have seen a bunch of new products targeted toward seniors at home in various ways. And they all look a lot like things that we've already seen. These are products that have been out there for several years, right? So there's nothing new in the technology. There's maybe some new technology underneath some of these things, but the application is usually not very new. A couple of robots. These are robots. I took these in Auckland, New Zealand in 2012. Professor Bruce McDonald at the University of Auckland was working on these kind of systems and trying them out in a retirement home in Auckland. And even though what you get here is essentially an iPad on wheels, they found that the residents really went to the more anthropomorphic the device was, the more interaction people got with them and preferred it. And you get the typical applications for, you can have games for brains and entertainment, call your grandchildren, FaceTime your grandchildren. And then we saw some of these things, you know, pill dispensers, being able to keep track of these things, all right? And I just wanted to throw this one up. This is a 1988 version of a medication reminder made with calculator technology. And I know this one well because it was my company. And we did this in 1988. And we had these on the shelves in drugstores, and we found out that people didn't want to pay for it. All right? This is a company, a home care company, that raised $27 million earlier this year. And their whole story is, well, we'll put an iPad in mom's house. And they have apps, and so. Company raised $20 million selling software, or using software to match care providers to patients and put in off-the-shelf cameras and connect it all together. But nothing new there. It's just they put a business together. Other businesses, I'm running out of time. This is a company that has a deal with LG, and they build their own apps into the LG system. This is a San Diego company that I happen to know. Some of the things we've learned over the last 30 years or so, technology is not a product, and a product usually isn't a business. It's not a solution. You need to solve a problem, and you need to solve a problem that somebody in the system is willing to pay for. So, or you can start a not-for-profit or run it out of a philanthropic basis. But if you want to have something sustainable from a business point of view, and if you're going to go to an investor, you really need to have something that has a sustainable business model, okay? Products that require changes in the way doctors practice medicine really take several decades to get commercialized. Baby boomers, you know, full disclosure, I'll be 67 this month. I'm pretty comfortable with the technology. And so are most of my friends, all right? So people who are 80 and 90, maybe not so much, although when my mom died last year at 91, she had the iPad and the iPhone on her bed. Baby boomers will use technology, and they'll buy it out of their pocket if it solves a problem for them. But if it's something that they think is part of the medical care system, right? If their doctor requires them to do this stroke rehab, right? Well, you know, if that's part of what the doctor says, then Medicare should pay for it. I'm not going to pay out of my pocket. So. Business models that do work, if you have tools for these service providers, the technologies can become products that allow them to grow or execute their business better, faster, cheaper, make them more money, be more competitive. And disruptive service models can be a good model. For example, starting a house call business can disrupt the existing primary care providers' offices. So I made it in that time available by skipping over a bunch of stuff. So thanks.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers. I'd like to invite all the panel members up to the front now, and if you can all make sure your wireless mic is on, I'll bring a microphone around so we can do question and answers. Just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over.
Hello. Well, first of all, thanks. That was really great. Let's give them all another round of applause. Really. Here's a paradox or irony I see, and this isn't for anyone in particular, but just a notice, but anybody, I mean, there's this incredible emphasis on being at home, staying at home forever, and then, but the worst problem is staying at home and you're lonely and miserable and can't get through the day without too many drugs. So, are there any advances, and you said you, well, just ask the question. So are there any advances in collective living later in life that include some medical care or seem to be working or attractive to people, or, you know, that kind of put it together? I don't think I heard any of that, so that's the question.
There are that I'm aware of, a few experiments with kind of group homes for seniors. So it's not necessarily a retirement community, but maybe a house. So instead of having 12 college students in the house, you might have 6 seniors in the house, and supported through some home care services or home health care services. They're trying that in San Francisco that I'm aware of. And there are other ways of trying it. One of the issues is there are retirement communities where you get independent living and then skilled nursing, as well as assisted living, which is intermediate, plus some memory care. They tend to be expensive. And going into that, you know, independent living, you're on your own. Skilled nursing is sometimes reimbursed by Medicare under certain conditions, but not long-term. So those systems don't serve well the demographic, the bottom 80% of the population. So the long answer, no, I'm not aware of anything major successful.
There's Pokemon Go.
My question is for Mark Bachman. In developing video games for health-related reasons, have you met the challenge of regulatory claim making or anything like that? It's not a medical device, it's not a drug, but it's something that is purporting to provide some sort of health benefit.
That's good. This is good. Thanks. Yeah, good question. So it's really interesting. We're kind of on a fine line these days. There's a lot of, it's not just games, it's technology in general, where we're trying to skirt the issue of FDA regulatory issues. And so many of the projects that we do, and also the companies we work with, want to provide benefit in a way where they don't call it medical, and they don't offer a medical claim, because as soon as you offer a medical claim, yeah, you have to worry about FDA clearance. So if I go to the store and I buy some weights, well, that has obvious benefit if I use them, right? So we generally try to stay on that side of things. Now, we do collaborate with the medical schools, not just here at UCI, but with Cedars-Sinai and Children's Hospital of Orange County. So if we need to go there, we will. But there, we have to brace ourselves for the long haul. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of clinical studies and so forth. But I just want to use one example of a product that actually does have evidence behind it for medical benefit that was successful, and that's actually the music glove. That actually went through, Nissan and his team went through a lot of work going through FDA to finally get this thing approved for use. And I don't know if he wants to share some of his insight on that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Is this on?
No, use this one.
Okay. Yeah, so there is one caveat. So we did get FDA, we are FDA listed, but we didn't need to be FDA approved. It's a class 1, yeah. So that's probably the best case scenario, because there you have a little bit of barrier to entry. You can make medical claims. You can charge a little bit more for it, yet you don't need to go through a 510K process. In the state of California, you do need to be an approved manufacturer by the Food and Drug Branch of California, and you need a good manufacturing practice in place, but there's no real approval process like you would see in invasive devices. So I think it's a really good field to be in, and if you can find a predicate for the device that you're building that fits into a Class 1 device, chances are that you can just list yourself under there and list yourself with the FDA.
Mark, just a quick follow-up question. Are there any companies that exist now that specialize in creating video games for the elder community?
Oh yeah, there's a lot out there actually, and the problem is that just like anything that's new, not all of them are really necessarily good for you. So when we're on this side of the FDA, on the sort of the lifestyle side, then there's a little bit of that caveat emptor, where the buyer beware. And so, but there are quite a few. What I would suggest if you are looking for these games is to do your own homework on them and check with who they've worked with, what their evidence-based research is that they're drawing from, and so forth. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more of that.
Any other questions? Sorry. They won't pick it up on the video if you do that, so I'll give this to you anyway. Thanks.
So my question is actually for Dr. Friedman from Flint. So with the stroke technology that you're developing, more so the boot camp, P90X, if you will, why did you maybe go with a video like that instead of integrating a dual function technology like the Kinect, where you could have a gaming or a program, for stroke rehab that then could also assess their progress over time and be sent to physicians? Like, is there a particular reason you didn't go with something? Because there's some research out there starting in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of Kinect-based systems. Our approach has always been usability first. And there's a lot of design considerations when you're talking about someone who may have never double-clicked an icon. And the issue is that when you try to provide something like a Kinect-based system to someone who isn't familiar with technology, they're going to shy away from it, and they're not going to use it. So it's really this balance that you need to make sure you weigh whenever you're creating technology for the population you're trying to create it for. I think the Kinect-based systems are good for a younger population. And there are types of hardware that you can build for an older population, but it needs to be incredibly easy to use. If it takes more than a minute to set up, then you're not going to sell any of it. That could work, as long as you're able to quantify it the right way. The other side to it is a physician doesn't want to spend more than 20 seconds looking at your data. So those are two things, yeah. 10 seconds, right, there you go. Yeah.
First, thank you all so much. Great speakers. My question is, you're starting to develop technologies. These technologies solve problems, but they're highly collaborative. I'm wondering at what point this broaches into HIPAA or other type of regulations, and if there's like a way to get around this as you move forward.
Not so sure it's my specialty, but one of the things to understand about HIPAA is there are certain entities that are covered by HIPAA and others are not. So when we look at HIPAA compliance, not everybody is actually required to be HIPAA compliant. So if I choose to share my medical data with you, you're not necessarily, you're not under that regulation. Now, of course, if you compromise my data, I may have civil action against you, but I don't have those regulatory action against you. So it's a matter of who you are and who the person chooses to share that data with. So that doesn't mean that these technologies don't encroach on some of those areas in which you are responsible. And then that also talks about just general personally identifiable information, which everybody actually is required to protect. So from the standpoint of IRIS, we may or may not be regulated by HIPAA depending upon how we purport ourselves. Again, are we a medical entity and do we fall under that? Does the person choose to share the data? But we also have to be very compliant with privacy regulations because we may be holding and using personally identifiable information. So there's really kind of two issues there. One, who is regulated by HIPAA per se, and who is regulated by other personally identifiable information. Does that answer?
I just wanted to add. Oh, good. Well, like for us, our plan is to collect, like data from, medication use, wearable devices. There's going to be a lot of HIPAA, issues, and Verizon, AT&T, they all have HIPAA compliant like web services protected. And so, they have, technology in place for people to build innovation and use like wireless technology, and there is services for that. And then, even then, like we would plan to anonymize data too, strip the personal health information data from and then actually still use it for machine learning, deep learning. And that's still possible as long, and people, IBM just purchased a whole, paid a lot of money for personal information, and they're actually using it for machine learning for Watson.
So my experience is that, can you hear me? It's on. So my experience as a consultant is that actually you should be very well advised and very well aware of HIPAA, and not only HIPAA, but actually 42 CFR if you're dealing, which is a much stricter component of privacy and security that has to deal with anything that has to do with mental health or substance use disorder, if you have any of that information in any of the applications that you're working with, even if you're not a covered entity. So in my experience as a consultant, I get asked a lot by payers. So with regards to what we were speaking about, when you're talking about going to people who are actually going to pay for your technology, I get asked to advise large health plans or health systems who want to bring in a technology, and frequently that technology might have the technology itself is secure, but the understanding in terms of the policy and the staff do not understand the privacy and security. So although you might not be a covered entity, this is something that you should be very well versed in, and you should build it with the expectation that to monetize this, who's going to be paying for this. Eventually, you will probably be in some type of what's called a business associate arrangement with a health payer. And so that's how I would look at it. Whether or not you're starting off at the beginning being engaged in that environment, I would go with being very cautious up front, because that's who's going to be paying for it.
Hi, this question's for Linda. Could you describe the IRIS OC? Is it available now to the population? And if so, how is it available? And what's the revenue model, or is there a revenue model for it?
We're currently in alpha, so we're still in development. So it's not publicly available yet. However, we will be recruiting beta testers. So raise your hand. So it's not currently available. We actually have several models for revenue generating. Not the least of which is some really typical ones in terms of local services and vendors, the directory kind of assistance, the sort of yellow pages aspect of that. But we're still in the process of creating those commercialization models. But first and foremost, we want this to be a community collaborative effort, a community-based effort. And so that's our focus right now, is getting this in the hands of caregivers and older adults to start using this kind of technology and aggregating many of the things that they're going to need to manage their strategies using this kind of technology. So we're still in the very early stages.
Thank you again to everyone. I wanted to ask a question following on the first question that was asked, and that has to do with how you can bring some of these services into those for-profit entities such as CCRC or communal assisted living or even independent living, where they may want to pay for these kinds of services. And is there a pending model for getting them into those kinds of, not just individual group homes, but the larger communities?
I'll ask you to clarify that a little bit for me. How do you get these products, or how do you get any products, or how do you?
I was thinking I was thinking of Iris OC. I was thinking of the glove that's used for stroke therapy. But for example, right here, not too far away, is Regents Point. And Regents Point is a CCRC, and it's both independent, assisted living, and skilled nursing. And how might that private entity run by Presbyterian Homes access some of these things versus putting it into just private home health care and collaborating with, senior centers and so forth?
I think the developer, the owner, the vendor of the product has to figure out how they're going to distribute the product, how they're going to sell it, and plus how they're going to manufacture it, how they're going to do everything. I mean, these are all very early stages. So might ask you to talk about it. I don't think there's anything particularly unique about our retirement community in terms of being a customer for, the retirement community would not likely be the customer. It would be the residents. So again, it goes back to, is this a medical product that needs to be provided as part of a rehab program, or is it a consumer product that doesn't have those kind of health claims, and it can be sold to anybody who has the money to buy it? So.
Yeah, so the short answer is that they give us a call and our salesman just closes the deal. And our product's a little bit unique in the sense that it can be sold over the counter. So the reality is that if a living community sees enough value in the product, they just buy it for their residents. I would say in terms of our sales, we're split roughly 60-40. 60% are sales directly to the user at home, and 30 or more percent is to inpatient, outpatient clinics, and then you have senior living facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and so forth that just buy for their patients or their residents.
Can I ask you a question? Because can you hear me now? The applicability is actually very fascinating with your product, and I think it's not just for seniors. I work with a lot of vulnerable populations, and access to physical therapy is a big issue. Mm-hmm. So focusing on the jail population, for example, where I cannot find enough physical therapists. So how does the model work? Could you explain to us how the model works, and then does it involve having to have, for example, if a particular setting had a contract, real life physical therapist, and that physical therapist reviews, can you explain to us how that works?
Sure, yeah. So in terms, most of the times, the clinic themselves, they either have someone on staff who is interested in the product, or it's someone who's higher up that ends up being interested in the product and buys it for the clinic. And the product's easy enough for the clinics the therapists just to try it out and learn how to use it. So our business model for the clinics is we ship a free demo out anywhere in the country. And they get to use it for 30 days. They get to call us if they have any questions. A lot of times they don't, and they use it with their patients. I think that we need to give a lot of credit to the therapists. A lot of them are MacGyver, type of therapists. They like to use technology. They see the value of technology and tools for saving time, for providing group therapy. So again, if you make a technology easy enough to use, you don't need an in-service. You don't need training. I think some of those things are outdated models and ways to, just kind of pull more money from the clinics each month, which I don't think is necessary.
And can I just address this really quickly? Is one of our models is white labeling. Because of the database aspect of this and the unique locality of it, we can form IRIS so it can be micro-local to that specific community. And so that would be a white label for some of those communities where it would be just the members of their neighborhood or within that community. And then they can form their own content partners or even technology and third-party app partners to be able to use this platform to, again, kind of micro-customize the IRIS platform for their particular population.
I have a question for Linda as well. Iris looks like a promising platform, and I have some questions on the features, but one of the ones that I'm interested in is specifically how the resource listing will be populated. Is that something that you're pulling together for the area, or are users going to be adding their own resources? And then how do you ensure the quality? Are you thinking of doing it more like a Yelp where people make reviews, or is there some kind of screening process?
First of all, both. These are going to be vetted by the IRIS team, and it's something that we've spent a lot of time talking about because obviously for this somewhat vulnerable population, we need to have resources that have been vetted. So we are definitely vetting those resources. But we're also going to enable the social features like reviews so that people know exactly what the experience have been of other people. So again, that kind of goes back to that data sharing. I've used that service provider, and this has been my experience for it. So it's a very important element. Giving people the opportunity to review those particular service providers is also very important.
I think we have time for one more question before the reception. Then I'm going to ask the last question, if you don't mind. I know we saw a slide from one of you. I don't remember which slide, which presentation of showing an elderly man with a VR headset on. Just wondering if any work is being done, any significant work in the area of virtual reality for seniors.
The answer is absolutely yes. And the reason I put that slide up there is kind of to just look ahead. I'm talking about video games. I'm talking about music, and now we suddenly have this new technology on the scene, VR. And I've personally seen several startup companies offering VR products for seniors. And if you Google VR for seniors, you're going to get quite a few already. The good news is Orange County is kind of one of the headquarters for this kind of stuff because the real value of VR for seniors or for anyone really is the content. So it's not really about technology. It's about the content. And we're in one of the content centers of the universe, right? LA is just up the street and so forth. And we have video gaming companies here. So absolutely, yes. I think as VR matures, we're going to see more and more emphasis on what kind of content can we deliver for seniors through this platform. And what I've seen, and I haven't seen any scientific studies yet. It's too new for real clinical studies. But the stuff that I have seen is pretty exciting. I mean, people get really emotional even wearing these things. They're participating in their old hometown, for example, from 30 years ago, or seeing pets, things that you don't think about normally, but now suddenly are brought to you. So I think we're going to see a lot of cool innovation there, and I mean innovation on the content.
Let's give a final round of applause for our panelists. And our reception is right outside in the lobby. Thank you.
I had to keep that part off.